National Fishing Expo. My name's Matt Quinn. I'm the owner of High Tech Outdoors. We're based right on the north end of Kentucky Lake. High Tech Outdoors installs about 1,400 installs every single year at our facility. We do it by appointment, and we do a lot. Marine electronics has really expanded over the 14-year life of the company. And what I'm going to talk about today is live sonar. So how many people have Humminbird Mega Live system? Okay, how many people have the active target system from Lowrance? And then the live scope from Humminbird. Okay, some of you don't have any of that. We're going to really talk about a lot. We're going to talk about all three brands. We sell all three brands at our store, and we're going to make sure that you understand what you can do to optimize that cost. I mean, these things are not cheap, and a lot of people have bought them and they're frustrated with them. And what we're going to try to do is help you understand how the system and technology works, and we're going to go from there, okay? All right, here we go. Some of the things, if you already have equipment, these are items that you can do to really help you optimize that investment. Get the installation of your equipment evaluated by an installer like we are. We're a certified company. We're certified by all of the brands to be able to put these on a boat properly. Because 9 times out of 10, when people come to our store and say, hey, my system's not working, it's because it wasn't installed properly. These systems are highly susceptible to voltage drop. There's a lot of problems if you don't put them in properly, and I can help you do that. We actually do that as a free service. If you drove down to Kentucky Lake on a fishing trip and you stopped by my store, I can go through your boat and evaluate whether or not it was installed properly or not. Wouldn't take you more than 10 or 15 minutes. Update your firmware and software on your units. This is pretty imperative. There's a lot of stuff on the internet about not updating your units because it's going to screw them up. I'm here to tell you the manufacturers don't do that on purpose. They don't try to screw you up. But what is important is you want to have the latest and greatest software on there. And the reason is that if I'm trying to help you troubleshoot on the water, you're out on the water, I'm at my shop, I'm trying to troubleshoot you through the process of understanding what might be wrong. The only way I'm going to be able to do that is if your software is matching mine, okay? Because features are added all the time to these things. It's nothing unlike your cell phone. Your cell phone gets updates every week, okay? We, in the marine industry, we really aren't updating that often, but we are updating about every 3 to 6 months. So make sure your firmware and software is up to date. The technology is moving fast. Everybody kind of knows this now. I've had a lot of people come into this booth today, and they told me that they have a system that they bought in 2010. I'm here to tell you the systems that were put in 2010 are not going to be compatible with the new technology. It's just not capable of it, okay? So what you really got to make sure of is that you have to understand that your system, if it's not within about a 3-year window, it's not going to probably be compatible with a live system. Make sure your equipment's mounted properly. I kind of talked about that. A lot of times what I see is I see people that have systems that they don't even touch. They have them in their boat, but they don't interface to them. I'm here to tell you, with live technology, you have to constantly interact with the graph to be able to make the adjustments necessary to make them optimized. It's very important to do that. Keep your equipment software updated. I said it once already. I'm saying it again. Take care of your equipment. If it's broke, fix it. I'll give you an example. I had somebody that had a Garmin LiveScope system, and the person that he installed it himself, no problem, not a big deal. He actually did a really good job with it. And he came to me and says, hey, you know, my transducer's just not showing me what I think it should. And I said, well, what's going on? He says, well, it's progressively gotten worse over the last 2 weeks. And I asked him, well, let me look at your boat. I went outside and I looked through his boat. It looked immaculate. His boat was clean. The wiring was nice and tailored. Everything looked great. And then I asked him a question. I said, what actually seems to be the problem? He said, well, I was having trouble with this transducer, so I moved it. And I said, okay. I said, what? And I routed it through a different place. So I unplugged it from the GLS box, the black box. I unplugged it, rerouted it through my boat where it was a little more tidy. But ever since then, I've had a trouble. Well, what happened is the little O-ring seal that was on that little connector, he noticed that he had knocked it off and he didn't replace it. Well, guess what happened? Water got into that GLS box and it ended up destroying his box. He didn't even know that it was going to destroy the box. It just progressively got worse. The corrosion on the pins was getting progressively worse, and when that happened, it made the thing fail finally. So if you notice things that are broken, fix them. He could have fixed that with an O-ring and it would have been taken care of. Instead, he paid $1,200 for a new GLS box. Get the training on the installation of your boat. If you don't, how many people here know where every fuse and every circuit breaker on your boat is for your electronics? Does everybody know that? You know it because you wired it. But most people, when you buy a boat or get it from a dealer, you have no idea. Fuses are to protect equipment, okay? So if you have a fuse, it's to protect the fish finder, the GLS box, the equipment. Circuit breakers are in your boat to protect wire. That's all they're made for. They're not made to protect equipment. So if you have equipment hooked up to your devices, a circuit breaker, it is not going to protect that device. You have to have a fuse. And that's based off of how fast a fuse reacts compared to a circuit breaker. A circuit breaker has to heat up before it trips. A fuse will automatically trip as soon as it sees too much current. Okay? So fuses protect equipment, circuit breakers protect wire. Got it? Might have learned something today. Taking on the water class in your boat. One of the things that we do down at our shop is we take people, doesn't matter what brand of product you have, we go in your boat, take you out on the water, and show you how to use it. A lot of times it's just like your cell phone. Your cell phone has 30,000 different things that it can do, but who's going to show you how to use it? No, I don't even know anybody. Verizon's not going to show me. But what we try to do is we have an on-the-water class that we go and spend 4 to 5 hours in your boat, optimizing your imaging, and training you how to use it, okay? That's really the best method to learn. As an adult, we all learn by doing. You can read all the manuals you want, you can read all the YouTubes that you want, but it's still not as good as you seeing it in real time on your boat. So take an on-the-water class. Keep your expectations in check. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. If you bought a used LiveScope off of the internet because somebody was selling it to upgrade to the new one, you have to understand that the new one is going to look different from the old one. The old one cannot perform the way the new ones do. That's why they upgrade them. Okay? So keep your expectations in check. If you spend $500 on a fish finder, okay, you're not going to get good imaging off of a $500 product. It isn't going to happen. Even though the marketing big box stores want to tell you that that's what's going to happen. I'm telling you, it isn't going to happen. Okay, if you're looking for new equipment, how many people are evaluating putting live imaging on their boat today? Almost the whole crowd. Okay, this is what you can do to help yourself understand what to do. Don't trust anything that you read on the internet. I'm here to tell you the internet's great to learn things, but I'm here to tell you there's a lot of bad information out there. I spend probably 80% of my day trying to get rid of the problems that the internet causes. You know, basically the fishing community is a pretty tight fit. You know, we all communicate. We love to communicate. We tell stories. Not all those stories are true, okay? So you have to be really, really careful on the internet. And I'm going to show you a couple examples of what that means. Evaluate the equipment based on the boat you have and the type of fishing that you do. Not every single solution that you purchase is going to help you fish. And the reason is some people troll, some people spider rig, some people cast, some people vertically jig. It depends on the type of fishing that you're doing. You can go spend all the money in the world to put on your boat and put all these electronics on it, but if it doesn't do what you do and the type of boat that you have, you're spending money, you're wasting your money. Okay? I always ask 3 questions when I meet a person. What kind of fishing do you do? What type of boat do you have? And are you a smartphone user or a flip phone user? And everybody laughs about this smartphone question. But I'm here to tell you that if I try to sell somebody a touchscreen unit and they are a flip phone user, they are not going to use that unit. They're intimidated by the fact that it's got a touch. But if I also have a guy that's a touchscreen user, he's got the smartphone, knows all the things to get and do on the smartphone, and I try to sell him a keypad only unit, he's going to be so frustrated, he's going to tell me, I'm never coming to you again. That's why I ask those 3 questions. You get what you pay for. We already kind of covered that. It really comes back to, you know, the big box stores. We live in the big box store era. What really happens now is instead of consumers like us, okay, telling the manufacturers these are the things that we want, what's happening is they're listening to the big box store buyer and they're saying, hey, I want high-speed GPS, I want side imaging, high definition, I want high definition down imaging, I want chirp sonar. I want to be able to label that on my box and sell it for $500. That's what they're going to basically tell you that they want, okay? So I'm going to give you a little story. The analogy there is I went to the hardware store several years ago with my grandfather. This has been a long time ago, more than 50 years ago. We went and evaluated a jigsaw at our local hardware store in Perryville, Missouri. That's where he lived. We went, there were 3 jigsaws right there on display. Guy comes up, asks my grandfather, what do you need it for? What are you going to be using it for? Grandpa tells me, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this. The guy says, okay, I suggest this one that's kind of middle priced. It wasn't the lowest price, it wasn't the highest price, it was right in the middle. I used that jigsaw for a long time, or my grandfather did, and then I inherited it, okay? So what happened there is that my grandfather taught me I needed to evaluate. You just don't go buy the most expensive. You don't also just buy the cheapest. You need to evaluate based off of what you're going to use it for. That's what you should evaluate it as. Well, what happened was is I said, you know what, I was 8 years old at the time, and I thought that was a pretty cool experience. I was able to understand what kind of questions to actually ask. So I said, you know what, when my boy gets old enough, I'm going to do the same. I take him to my Lowe's or a Home Depot, and I went to there, and I said, okay, I want to buy a jigsaw. Guy goes, okay, I'm going to buy a jigsaw. I look at it, there were 15 of them. And I'm like, holy cow. I'm like, what now? What do I do? Well, the guy didn't ask me what I was going to use it for. He says, well, just pick one. Guess what? I picked one. I bought the most expensive one. I took it home, started on a project to finish my wife's bathroom, and guess what? Within 3 days, that thing failed. Right? Went back to the hardware store and said, hey, this thing failed after 3 days. Well, you're going to have to get with the manufacturer. Okay. So I did all this, that, and the other. My story is that because the box store said that it did this, did this, did this, it didn't really perform that well. The thing burnt up. It basically burnt itself up because I was cutting tile with it. So you have to really understand what you're applying for. You get what you pay for. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about live, why we're here, why you guys are sitting in the audience. Everybody's seen this image, right? Basically, you're seeing a guy drop his line down to the fish, and the fish is looking at it. He comes up to it in real time without moving the boat. He's able to see the fish go up to the bait, and he catches it, right? So this is what we're really trying to look at. This is live technology. So how many people use this today? How many people have been successful using this today? A little bit, pretty good. So I'm going to kind of go through what live sonar actually is, okay? So there's a forward mode, which is basically pointing the transducer in a forward direction, and we're going to move that transducer to the location where the fish or brush pile is, okay? So that's in the forward motion. So what you see here, let me see if I can, you can't really see it. Up here is our boat, and we're looking forward. So wherever the transducer is pointing is where it's going to see it. Next one is down. So the boat is here in the middle, and it's 135 degree down. All right, everybody got that? So that's the down view. And then there's the live sonar perspective, scout, and landscape mode. So there's different names for the same exact view. That view is basically turning the transducer in that vertical mode to a horizontal mode. So now we're going to go out 135 degrees in a horizontal mode. So our boat is here, and what that allows us to do is to see everything in a 135 degree cone of the way that that transducer is pointed. So if I move the transducer over here, it's 135 degrees and it's going to pick up that speaker. If I move that 135 degree cone in front of all the audience here with the chairs, that's who I'm going to see on the screen. Okay, everybody got that? That's the perspective scout landscape mode. This is the best mode to use if you are a bluegill fisherman and want to see bedded fish. This is the way to do it. You'll watch the fish go in and out of the bed. It's awesome. Okay, so what's important about live technology is the orientation of the transducer. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, the troubleshooting things that we have to do at our store is because people don't have their transducer pointing in the right direction. Okay? So, for example, this is a Mega Live system. There's 3 differences between Humminbird, Lowrance, and Garmin. Humminbird decided to put one element, a single element, and a single receiver on their transducer. So wherever this element is pointing is the direction that the live is pointing and showing you on the screen. Okay? The receiver is actually this rounded edge here. So that gives us that 135-degree cone. They call it a cone, it's not a cone. With active target from Lowrance, you'll notice that it actually has 3 faces on it. It has the emitter and receiver in the same plane, and there are 3 of them. One's in the forward mode, it's down. The next one is slightly forward, and the next one is full forward. So that orientation of these transducers is very, very important. Most all the mounts have a little click mechanism. You can actually feel or hear it click to the next position. So we have to go back to cone angles, and this is the boring part of my presentation. I have to apologize. But we're going to go back to the cone angles because I got to teach you what's important here. Everybody's always understood that underneath the boat, the transducer is the point, and then as the deeper the water, the wider the cone beam, right? So the deeper the water, the wider that cone. It's a trigonometry question. So for example, at 200 kilohertz, our cone is smaller. So the higher the frequency, the smaller the cone is. Everybody got that? This is just 2D color sonar. So at 83 kilohertz, look at the range or area that 83 kilohertz is seeing. So this little brush pile or this laydown is being seen by the 83 kilohertz signal, but not the 200. And the boat hasn't even moved. Everybody see that? So if you want to be able to scan, all right, if you really truly want to be able to scan and see the widest width of your scan, you need to lower your frequency. Got it? Higher frequency, skinnier beam. Gives you better resolution, but it's a skinny beam. I'm going to show you it in color on this next slide. So, a traditional 3-in-1 or a side imaging, down imaging, and sonar transducer has all these sensors in them, right? So in red, we have the 83 kilohertz signal. In the yellow, it's the 200 kilohertz signal. That's 2D sonar. If you look at the green here, that green elliptical pattern is down imaging. Okay? The blue is the side imaging beam. Now look at how skinny these beams are on side and down imaging. Do you see that? They're not a cone. They're not round. They're a slice. They're a real slither beam. Everybody got that? So that's side, down, and sonar. Now we're going to go to live. So what live sonar, like I said, with Lowrance and Garmin, they have 3 sensors on their transducer. There's 3 elements on it. One looks down, one looks slightly forward, and one looks all the way forward. They stitch those 3 imagers together to give you the live view. Everybody got that? So they're actually stitching each image and putting it together graphically so that you can see that forward live view. Everybody got that? Here's what's different. If I look from the top down, if I look from the sky down, this is the elliptical pattern of the beam. And it is only 22 inches wide at 50 feet away. How do I know this? I know it because I put it in the hog trough right when LiveScope first came out, and we did not see the sides of the hog trough where the metal beams were. We only saw inside the hog trough. So again, 22 inches wide is probably skinnier than the chair you're sitting in. And so I have an elliptical pattern, so it goes out and then it kind of clamps itself. All right? So this is what makes live technology very difficult to actually use. How many people have used live where they're sitting there trying to find that brush pile? They know it's there and are trying to move their transducer right to that spot to be able to show it, and it keeps going in and out of it. Well, how many people have been in a boat where the boat's sitting perfectly still all the time and you're fishing? Hardly ever, you know, the wind's blowing, the boat's rocking, everything's moving. Well, guess what? If I have a 22-inch wide beam focused 50 feet away, it's hard to stay on a target, is it not? How many people have experienced this? This is the number one problem that people, whenever they buy live technology, this is the number one thing. You have to realize that the beam is clamped. It only goes 22 inches wide or so. What brand do I choose? I get this question 100 million times, especially during boat show season. I'm here to tell you, it no longer matters. Fortunately, we have, all three brands have three fantastic products that we can choose from. So if you're familiar with Lowrance technology, I say go with Lowrance. If you have Garmin and you know Garmin and you really like it, buy the Garmin. If you like Humminbird, go buy the Humminbird product. And the reason for that is you're going to use it. If you're familiar with it, you're going to end up using it and changing the parameters around that. I'll give you an example. Everybody says, hey, I bought a Humminbird 15 years ago and it's the easiest to use. You know the reason why it's the easiest to use? It's because you're familiar with it. When you're familiar with something, it's easy. When you never have used it before and don't understand the difference between sensitivity and contrast, it's hard. Or you don't know the menu structure of the view button and the exit button and hit the menu and get to the right parameter. That becomes daunting if you don't know, if you're not familiar. On Lowrance, you have one. You have contrast. Well, their contrast is not the same as the contrast of a Humminbird. It's not the same value. But if you're a Lowrance user, you understand contrast because that's the parameter that you use to adjust to get a good image. Now, on the other side of it, you have Garmin. Garmin gives you 8 different parameters to adjust. How many people have gone into the Garmin system and said, okay, I got gain, and I got this, that. There's like 8 different settings, and they all make an impact on that view. Okay? Well, that also becomes, if you know what TVG actually does and how to utilize it, or color gain or color limit, if you know what those actually do, then it becomes easy for you to adjust. If you don't, it makes it hard. So none of these are easy to use. I can tell you right now, the people that know how to, the guys that are on the internet and say this is the easiest one to use, they don't know how to use it. I'm here to tell you. That's my first question. Do you know how to use it? Well, yeah, I know how. I'm perfect at it. Okay. So I'm going to show you a couple images. This is a Garmin system. All right. Really good, nice black background. Lots of fish. I think this is on Kentucky Lake. There's a nice brush pile down here. Pretty easy to understand and view. So I'm going to just you'll watch the video here. He's jigging his jig right up above the brush pile, and that fish came up to eat it. Here he comes. See that? That was a double rig, by the way. So what do? You catch the fish, right? Looks pretty good. Here's another view. This is the forward-looking view. He's got his 2 jigs here. Going up, fish is caught. Now this is what it's all about. To be able to watch fish react to your bait is the most significant thing that live gives you. Video game fishing is one thing, but what I'm here to tell you is live technology can give you the ability to understand what the fish are doing to react to your bait. I'll give you an example. The first time I ever used it, I vertically jigged. What did I always do whenever I'd drop the jig down in the brush pile? I'd wait and count to 5 because I was taught that by my grandfather, right? Drop it down, let it hold it, and then if they didn't bite in about 5 seconds, what do? You jig it. right? That's what I was always told. I got my system where I dropped it down. I looked at my screen. I saw the fish come up to the bait, and then they kind of went away. So what did I do? I jigged it. You know what happened? It's the first time I ever used this stuff. It scattered the fish like a bomb went off. These were pressured fish, always being fished in that brush pile. They were pressured. And when I moved it too much, they scattered. And it took 5 minutes for them to come back and form back into that brush pile. So I changed my bait, my size and my color, dropped it down there, held it. Guess what? The fish came up to it and ate it. So that's what live can do for you. It can give you the ability to understand how the fish react to your bait. That's the number one thing you can do. The video game part of it is fun and cool, but realistically, you'll learn after having live scope of how many fish you're not catching. That's what you're going to learn. How many of you experienced that? I guarantee you, if you've used this technology, you'll look at it and say, man, what is the deal? I see them. This thing must be lying to me. They're just not going to eat. So here I'm going to give you which one to choose. So a lot of things on the internet. We talked about the information on the internet. It's good and it's bad. But the number one thing on the internet right now is that Mega Live from Humminbird does not work, and it's crap. You should never spend your money doing it. Well, I'm going to show you an image. So this guy is using it in perspective mode. He's down in Florida right now. The fish are in beds. They're bedding up. So he is right here, and the fish bed is right there. Now I'm going to turn on the video here, and you're going to see his reflection in the background, but you're going to see that fish appear. That fish is going in its bed and coming out of its bed. All right, now, this is a Humminbird. You see the top thing right there? That says Humminbird. Is this not a good view? Is this not a good, that's a good image. So just because the internet says that, hey, you can't get good images out of a Humminbird, he's got his 360 set up on here. He's looking at all these different beds, and he can position his Mega Live to the bed and watch that fish either react to his pitch or not. Is that cool? Pretty cool. So don't believe everything you read on the internet, because the Humminbird product is just as good as the Garmin and the Active Target from Lowrance. Okay? I sell all three. What's more important is go with the stuff you're familiar with, because you will use it and be able to make it work properly. Anybody seen this image before on their live scope? This is a Garmin system. They got all kinds of lines. I came in, said, Matt, man, I can't even see through my forward scan. I can't even see it. It's got a bunch of lines in it. So this is what he brought me. This is another example of what the internet does to this industry. It destroys certain things, and this is what happened. So I went outside, looked at his wiring. His wiring was fine. And I said, where's your battery that you use to power up your device? He goes, oh, I got that in the front locker. Because I read on the internet, if I use my DeWalt 18-volt battery or 20-volt battery, that I can power that and get a clear image. Now, everybody's laughing here because they've seen this on the internet. This was the number one problem when this first came out maybe 3 years ago now. It's been about 3 years. This was a fad that everybody in this industry started to do. They started taking it off their battery in their boat and started putting DeWalt or Milwaukee batteries on it. Well, guess what? The head unit is not rated for 20 volts. It's only rated from 12 to 16 on a Garmin. You're not supposed to put 20 volts to it. So what happened to him is he fried his system. But anyway, this is why the internet's not a good resource, because you don't know what you don't know. You can't even ask the question. So these new C-Clear harness, everybody heard about this C-Clear harness? Oh man, it gives me the clearest image. The C-Clear is, heck, they named it after it, okay? There is nothing wrong with this product, folks, but all it is wire. It doesn't make a clean image. It does not do that alone. It can't do that alone. All right? It's just wire. It's powering, so lithium batteries with this harness gives us nice constant voltage, which enables us to have consistent images. Okay? That's what makes it better. So when you make an adjustment on your Humminbird, Garmin, or Lowrance, it stays there and it's not affected by the voltage drop. That's all this is doing. It's not making a clearer image. Everybody got that? Everybody's seen these things on the internet. It's crazy. Okay, anybody seen these little icons over in these boat icons with the beams showing? Okay, on active target, this is a Lowrance and this is a Garmin one. So when you move the transducer, you actually do a calibration and you move the transducer, and that transducer moves on the screen. How many people have this on their boat now? Okay, you're the only one that raised your hand. And the reason is you probably have a heading sensor antenna on it. So in order for your system to know which direction the sensor is pointing, it has to know which way your boat is pointing. Right? So we're going to go back to charting. So charting, you have north up, heading up, and course up. Those are the three settings that you can have. Right? North up, heading up, and course up. So heading up is basically headed north up, in this case. So we're going to go to the next one. That's called heading. So as the boat is moving, the way you're headed is the way the boat is going to go. So if I turn right, it goes right. If you turn left, it goes left. Right? That's the way you're headed. So that's heading up. Now if I turn the big motor off and the wind or current drives the boat sideways, what happens to the boat? It drifts, right? It'll drift. That's called course. Everybody understand what course is? It's just like a NASCAR race driver going around a track or a dirt track. Guess what? They may be pointing one way, but they're going the other way. That's called course. All right? So you have heading. The boat is still pointing this way, but it's drifting that way. So if you adjust your map setting to course up, it's going the way you're drifting, not the way your boat is pointing. So I'm going to show you why this is really important. North up, we got a little north up indicator over in the right-hand corner there. So if I move the boat and I turn south, what happens on my graph? My chart doesn't rotate, but my boat does. When I'm driving the boat with north up, guess what happens when I drive south? It goes upside down and backwards. So you turn left, it goes right. If you turn right, it goes left, and it's going upside down. That's what north up. Now, the old timers use their graphs this way. They use north up because in their mind, they know which way north is. They know exactly which way it is. I think in the building, it's this way. Heading up is a little bit different. If I want to turn into this little island right here, guess what? What has to happen? I'm going to turn left. Which way, is it counterclockwise or clockwise that the map's going to rotate? It's going to rotate clockwise, right? So that's heading up. I turned left, it went to the left side. Now, if I switch it to course up, and I turn my motor off, and the wind or current's driving it toward a bigger island, which way will this chart rotate now? Clockwise or counterclockwise? Counterclockwise, right? We're drifting over to that position. Yep.
So for waypoint
So the question was, how do you know which do heading up, course up, or north up, and which side your brush pile or your waypoint is, right? That's why this is an important factor. Heading up, and you just hit the nail on the head. I'm going to get it to it on this screen. So a heading sensor compass. None of the brands, Garmin, Lowrance, Raymarine, Humminbird, none of them make the heading sensor built into the head unit. The reason is they don't know how you have that head unit oriented in your boat. And it's not always the same all the time. If you put it on a ram mount, it might be twisted this way and turned that way or whichever way. You have no sense of understanding which direction it is. So the only way you can get heading, okay, is with an antenna on every one of these brands. It's the most significant thing that you can add to your boat. Whether or not you're a kayak fisherman, a John boat fisherman, or the most famous bass fisherman in the world, if you don't have a heading sensor antenna on, this is why. If I have Mr. Steakbed bass in here, okay, I've got them right in head, what do? I mark a waypoint. I put a waypoint on them and I want to fish those fish. If the wind or current, based off of what I just trained you about course up, what happens to my boat? It's going to drift. And if you're in course up, what happens to the boat? It thinks it's going that way. So where's it telling me to cast? It's telling me to cast to the back of my boat about 5:30, right? So what do? You start casting. You start actually casting that direction towards the waypoint. Well, that's not what happened, okay? What actually happened was with this wind or current, the boat drifted sideways. So knowing which way the boat is pointing is important because the brush pile is at 1:30, 2 o'clock, right? So that orientation of knowing which direction the boat is pointing is only done with a heading sensor antenna. Everybody see it now? It can really screw you up on whether or not you're fishing the right side of the boat or the left-hand side of the boat. So, if I get an external antenna, where should I put it on my boat? Okay, I got a Bass Tracker 20-foot boat. Transducers on the very back, on the transom of the boat. I have my console unit 10 feet away from the back transom, and I got a front graph here going to the bow of the boat, right? This kind of typical setup for a fishing boat. So where do I put my antenna? So here's what happens. When I scan, that transducer is showing there, and I'm going to look for Mr. Bass in the stake bed, right? So what do? When I see that bass on the screen, I put a waypoint down, right? I see the cover, I got a spot. Look where your console unit is if you're using the internal antenna of your console. It's 10 feet off in this case, 10 feet. Okay, not too big, not that bad a deal. I understand that there's a little bit of a difference. I'll make up for it. I kind of know where that brush pile is. So what do? You drive away and you come back to the thing the opposite direction that you just marked it, right? That's what we'll do. We're going to fish the spot, right? So here's the waypoint. So we slow down, we get to that console spot. Guess what we see on the screen? Nothing. You know why? Because it's offset by 20 feet, the whole boat. You're off by 2. Okay? So how many people here have marked a spot on side down and sonar, tried to go back to fish it, and did not feel or find the fish or the brush pile? I can guarantee you everybody's done it. This is why. because the antenna has to be at the location that the sensing is happening. It's vitally important that it's marking the location of transducer. Otherwise, you don't know. Everybody got that? So what do? You continue on to scan, right? And I find another brush pile. So what did I do? I put another waypoint down. I got 2 waypoints for the same spot. Everybody's done this. So what's really important is that if you put your antenna that has a heading sensor on it, on the transom, and have yourself at the console referencing the GPS position of that antenna, you will always be right on the money. Now, your bow unit needs to be using its own internal antenna, but use the heading sensor line of the boat. So your heading doesn't change on a boat, only GPS location. All right, so on the bow, where your trolling motor is, that's where you want to use the internal antenna, but still use the heading sensor or heading line for on the back antenna. Everybody makes sense? All right, that's the end of my slideshow. I'm going to open it up for a couple of questions, and we're doing this live, so I have to repeat the question, but anybody else have any questions? I did that good. Where's Kentucky Lake at? Great question. Great question. We're in the western part of Kentucky. So Kentucky and Barkley Lakes are man-made lakes, Tennessee River and Cumberland River, and we also have the LBL. So it's about 6 hours here from Columbus to Kentucky Lake. How close to Louisville? So everybody thinks Kentucky is Louisville, but it's not. But you know where Paducah, Kentucky is? Okay, so Paducah and Murray, right in between Paducah and Murray, is where Kentucky Lake is. Yeah, that's the Twin Lakes. Yeah, a lot of people here call it the Twin Lakes. Any other questions? Yep.
I'm right on the internet, and I learned not to do that now. I see a lot of opinions about active target 1 and 2.
Okay.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Millertech
Good question.
National Fishing Expo's Columbus.
That's really loud.
Presented by FILL-RITE.
So
Our 5 o'clock sessions will be starting soon.
the question was,
Patrolling jigging and fish migration on stage B. Bill Fong, ice fishing safety in the Ice Fish Ohio booth. Bob Mehsikomer, Muskies, what you thought you knew on stage A. And Tim Clinton, keys to fishing offshore on the hog trough. Again, thank you for attending today. The Millertech National Fishing Expo's Columbus, sponsored by, presented by FILL-RITE.
okay, the question is that on the internet there's a lot of information about active target 1, active target 2, live scope original, live scope 2. You know, what can I believe out of that equation, okay? What I will tell you is the technologies have not really changed all that much between the two, other than the fact that they have lengthened the sensors in each one of those systems. So for example, active target 2, instead of a really small 1.5 inch sensor, it actually goes up to about a 2.5 inch sensor. So there's a little more resolution capacity and capability in the newer product. Having said that, you know, to a novice user, you may not even notice the difference in resolution. It's just like on your TV screen. If you go look at a resolution, a really, really high resolution 10K TV today, you may not be able to tell the difference between a 4K and a 10K. But people that use it every day, they can tell the difference. So as a novice user, you may not see the difference right away, but as an advanced user of this stuff, and when you're adjusting it really down, to be able to see the difference of having fish in the brush pile versus seeing the glob and blob of the brush pile, that's the real difference. It's just a resolution change. Sometimes, does it really affect watching a fish eat your bait? Probably not. I will say that the tracking of bait, of being able to track your bait through the water, is easier with the new sensors than the older versions. So there is an advantage of being able to see your bait easier with that. Does that answer your question? Any other questions?
I've had to see the electrical interference mess up and put like the heading sensor next to the valve.
Great question, Ed. Great question. Electrical interference. We deal with this a lot on boats, okay? So a lot of times, I'll give you an example. On the port side, we put our heading sensor antennas because typically the wiring harness of the boat is run on the starboard side or the driver's side of the boat. And the reason we do that is magnetic interference can definitely affect a magnetic heading sensor. And that's all these antennas really are. They have a magnetic compass in them, and that electrical interference can definitely make it poor. Great question. We'll be in booth, yep, one more question. Say that again. Yes, yes. I appreciate everybody. I'll be in 219 at our booth, High Tech Outdoors. Appreciate everybody. Thank you.